Welcome back. We're going to turn our attention to the state of Ohio, where a man who pled guilty to killing his girlfriend nearly a decade ago is being sentenced today. Frederick Reer pled guilty last month to involuntary manslaughter, tampering with evidence, and gross abuse of a corpse in connection to the death of Amanda Dean. The mother of four was last seen in July of 2017, and at the time, police believed she was in a domestic violence shelter. Before we go into court, here is more on the case from Court TV anchor Judge Ashley Wilcott.
On July 11, 2017, 36-year-old mother of four Amanda Dean went missing. When the family attempted to find Dean, the sheriff's office claimed Dean was in a domestic violence shelter.
He had told her that he had jumped through hoops, but they found Amanda and she's safe in a safe home. I just know she would not. She would not leave her family.
Dean was last heard from in a text message with her sister, and her family didn't believe she would stop communicating with them and began questioning if something more was going on.
He started getting violent with her, black eyes. I mean, these were things that were reported to the sheriff.
We were actually going to remove her from that home.
Dean was in an abusive relationship with her on and off again boyfriend, Frederick Reer. Prosecutors now say that Dean was dead since going missing back in 2017.
For a very long time, he had been the suspect in the case. Most people in my 33 years, when you go to place them under arrest for something, they really want to know what it's for. He did not ask, and I find that highly unusual and suspect.
According to the indictment, Reer allegedly killed Amanda Dean the day she disappeared, dismembering the remains of her body and burning the mattress she died on.
This family had asked for answers for years under the assumption that she was alive, but she wasn't. The second the BCI got involved in this case, everything seemed to turn for the better. And 414 days later, we got an indictment on this case.
All right, let's go into the courtroom now. We're going to get the start of the sentencing hearing of this case out of Ohio.
All rise, please.
Be seated. Court calls the case State of Ohio versus Frederick Reer, 2024-0091. We're here for purposes of sentencing this morning. Mr. Rich is here on behalf of the defense, and Mr. Sitterly and Mr. Caceres here on behalf of the state. We're here on pleas of guilty to count 1, an offense of tampering with evidence, a felony of the 3rd degree. Count 6 is also a tampering with evidence, a felony of the 3rd degree. Those each have the potential for 9 to 36 months in prison, up to $10,000 in fines. Also here on count 2, gross abuse of a corpse, a felony of the 5th degree that has potential for a 6 to 12 month prison sentence, up to a $2,500 fine, and amended count 5, involuntary manslaughter, a felony of the 1st degree that has a prison sentence of 3 to 11 years available, and up to a $20,000 fine. The parties have agreed that the charges would not merge for purposes of sentencing. Are both parties prepared to proceed with sentence here this morning?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The court did receive victim impact statements in the case, indicate that there were 18 of those received at this point. I'll go through the ones that were received. I can assure you all that I have read each of them and have taken them under consideration. We had a sister, Stephanie Whedon, mother Marion Toker, brother Jason Aldridge, sister Shannon Dean, son Sam Dean, nephew Derek Wilson, son David Dean, son Josh Dean, and son Jacob Dean. Also, Aunt Donna Garcia, friends Barbie Cookie.
Cooksey.
How do you say Cooksey?
Cooksey.
Okay, I can't read my own writing, so that I apologize. Also, Jenny Prentice, Victoria Craig as a niece, cousin Angel Hatley, and nephew Dylan Wilson. So I have reviewed all of those. I was informed that there were members of the immediate family that would like to address the court, and I'd like the victim assistant to assist them to the podium for purposes of those remarks. I'm going to ask them each at that time to give their name for the record, and then let me know what it is they would like me to consider. So if we could have the first of those come forward?
Your Honor, that would be Carolyn Tokar.
All right, very good. Ms. Tokar?
State your name, spelling your full name.
All right, good morning, Ms. Tokar. What would you like the court to consider?
My name is Caroline Tokar. I'm the mother of Amanda Dean. Spelling is Tokar. I would like to consider hearing my impact statement.
I did receive it and I reviewed it, yes.
Can I read it?
You may, yes.
Your Honor, I stand before you today as the mother of Amanda Dean. Amanda was the youngest daughter of my 3 girls. She was my baby. For 5.5 years, we believed that she was coming home. Sadly, later we discovered she was never coming home. Amanda was not only a precious daughter, she was also a sister, she was a mother, a granddaughter, a grandmother, a cousin, a niece, an aunt, a friend, and a human being. She was loved, she was wanted, she was needed in our lives. She was human, vibrant, beautiful, loving, personable, smart, artistic, selfless. She was a songbird. She had a warm heart, respectful, humorous, and a free spirit. Her laugh was so unique and unforgettable. And did I say loving? And did I say human? This is Amanda and who she was to me. 4 sons, 2 sisters.
Victim's mother addressing the court. Let's get a break. We'll pick it up right where we left off. Stay with us.
School shooting that broke hearts around the country and broke trust with law enforcement.
Now, the officer sworn to protect those students faces a jury.
The Uvalde school massacre trial. Live coverage this week on Court TV. This week,
We kick off the year with an in-depth look at the country's biggest trials and true crime investigations for 2026.
opening statements with Julie Grant. Mornings at 8, 7 Central on Court TV.
Let's head back to Ohio. We're watching a sentencing hearing for 42-year-old Frederick Reer. Last month, he pled guilty to felony counts of involuntary manslaughter, tampering with evidence, and abuse of a corpse in the death of his girlfriend, Amanda Dean. She was last seen in 2017. Let's go back into the courtroom now. We're listening to the victim's mother.
That is 7 immediate family members who have lost 3,104 days as of today, each without a mother. Think about that. 3,104 days. Painful days each. Our family has endured an unimaginable amount of pain during this time. Words cannot describe our pain, our suffering, and our agony. To Fred Reer, I cannot begin to describe the magnitude of what you took away when you killed my daughter. You took her away from all of us. 4 sons must live without their mother. There'll be no more life to share with her. Birthdays, holidays, phone calls, family, special events, births, one-on-one conversations, a day, a night, a tear. Those things can no longer be shared because of you. Why, Fred? Why? How could you do this to someone you claim to love? How could any human being do this to another person? You took her life, you took her freedom. Why do you think you deserve anything different? You took away her every opportunity in life. You took away her chance to live and love and have hope. You took away every chance I had to share with her, a special mother and daughter time, with Amanda to go shopping, to work in the garden, which she loved, and talk on the phone, or share a special moment and holidays together. Amanda is and was my daughter first. Amanda was nothing short of an angel. She was a beautiful daughter, and I miss her so much. It makes me physically ill. It is unbearable when I think about what you did to her body. How dare you desecrate her body? You are pure evil, Frederick Reer. I hope that when you look at these pictures of our Amanda, that you can see the life that was in her that you destroyed. You killed her. You dismembered her, and you burned her precious body for days. But you did not kill her spirit, because her spirit lives with each of us. I hope you feel her right now in this courtroom with her boys as they stand bravely but tearfully before you. She's here, and she knows what you did to her, Frederick. And you know too. Before God, who misses nothing and knows every hidden truth, true justice is always served. And you, Fred Reer, you can rely on that. Every day I'm left angry. Every day I'm left empty. Every day I pray that you show some remorse for what you've done. As of today, I have not seen any remorse. I pray that God will have mercy upon your soul, and that is the Christian in me. Every day I'm left hoping that you'll suffer the rest of your life. Every day I hope you think about the beautiful life you removed, you killed, you silenced from the existence. Every day I hope you have to look over your shoulders, fearful that you will be cut limb to limb, like you did to my daughter Amanda. This is the mother in me. Amanda Dean will always matter. Your Honorable Judge Conley, we could not bring any part of my daughter home. We are left with nothing. We cannot properly bury her. I can't even begin to tell you how bad this all hurts. We weren't even allowed to have any of her belongings. I pray upon this court that you see the pain that this loss that we've had with this family has endured. No family should ever have to endure what we have, and it's for years. Fred Reer's heinous acts upon my daughter Amanda Dean are unforgettable and unforgiving. Please, I beg you to give Fred Reer the maximum sentence allowable under the law for each count to be served consecutively. Please. Her mother and friend.
Thank you for your comments. Appreciate you being here today. I know it takes a lot of courage.
Okay, that's the mother of the victim here. The case is complicated because there was no body and there's no cause of death. So that's why it's manslaughter. He pled guilty to that. And you have the fact that he abused a corpse. He pled guilty to that. You would think a guy like this goes to prison for the rest of his life. Not the case. Criminal defense attorney, former assistant prosecutor Franz Borchardt is with us. The more sinister and demented sometimes it gets, the less the law can do. And the key here is they don't know the cause of death. So that's why we're dealing in the manslaughter realm. That's why he jumped at the opportunity to plead guilty. And we went through this with Brian Walsh. The desecration of a corpse, the abuse of a corpse, a lot of states don't have a massive penalty because it goes all the way back to grave digging. And that's a different, you know, obviously scenario. People rummaging around digging up graves. They were given a year or two, and here the max for that is 2 years. Your thought about this strange window of this case with Frederick Reer?
So the victims have been waiting since 2017 to have some semblance of justice. And the best that they're going to get in this case is what? On the manslaughter, it carries up to 11. So, you know, the judge could run some of these counts consecutive. But be not mistaken, Ted, this guy, no matter what he gets, is going to get out of jail at some point. He's I'm going to say relatively young based on how old I am. He's in his, 40s? He's going to get out of jail most likely at some point. And so, you know, these are the tough cases. One, because it seems almost like a miscarriage of justice to allow this guy to have this, what I'm going to say is a sweetheart deal. But if he doesn't plead guilty, you may not get a conviction based on some of the issues with this case. And look, let me say this. Desecrating a body, making it to where the victims cannot bury the dead. Burial is something that goes all the way back to our origins, and not being able to do that is horrendous.
Yeah, and just victimizing the family is, again, and everybody, it is horrendous. Franz, thank you as always. Need a break. Coming up, more of the sentencing hearing for Frederick Reer right after this. Welcome back to Court TV Live. We're in Ohio this afternoon. Sentencing underway for a man who pled guilty to killing his girlfriend, Frederick Reer. Pled guilty last month ahead of his trial for the 2017 death of Amanda Dean. Dean and Reer were in an abusive relationship. Well, he was abusive, according to the state. And police initially believed that Dean was in a shelter at the time of her disappearance. Turns out, old Fred found her, killed her, burned her, and they don't know exactly her cause of death. So that's why he's only facing the manslaughter realm of sentencing. But when everyone is sentenced, they're also facing something else, and that is listening to the people that you affected, the friends and family of the victim. And that's what we're doing today. Let's go back into the courtroom now for more of the victim impact statements.
Time that these proceedings had taken to come to a close. You're certainly familiar with the efforts that were made to recover your daughter's remains, and I felt that was appropriate to allow that to play out. So I very much appreciate your patience and being here today. Thank you.
Shannon Dean.
And for this one, there was a request for no video. Audio would be permitted. Dean, if you could give your name for the record.
My name is Shannon Dean.
And what would you like me to know?
I'd like to read my impact statement, please.
Excuse me?
I would like to read my impact statement.
Oh, you certainly may. Thank you.
Your Honorable Judge Conway, I think the hardest thing is putting how I feel into words, especially in such a sensitive subject. I will never be able to express enough the damage I carry due to the heinous crime committed by Fred Reer. He took my sister's life on July 7th from what was reported. Amanda was my sister, my best friend, and my heart. We shared so many wonderful memories that I treasure deeply. Sad part is, all I have are memories. I have nothing of her possessions because we were denied to have any of her belongings, her pictures, her clothes, her jewelry, her photos, her journal, her paintings. All our materials were gone. I'm going to read about Amanda, my experiences that we treasure for memories that I have with her. You are here alive in flesh, with a beautiful smile, long, flowing, curly blonde hair, and as beautiful as God made you. You are here jumping off trees and sheds, going on bike rides to adventures, singing, laughing, enjoying life, camping, hiking, which you love to do. You love the outdoors so much. I remember one time we were playing with water in the apartment, and we got water in the next door, and then we got evicted because the water got everywhere. Me and my sister, of course. And then, my poor mom had to deal with us on that term. We would build igloos, and we would peel the tar off the roads, together, like those little bubbles. We went sledding down this hill, and my dad took us, and he lost his finger from a rock. And we still wanted to go sledding. We were like, no, let's keep going sledding. But my dad was like, no, we really gotta go, and it was just hanging there. My sister and I, though, we just love sledding so much because we just love the outdoors. And then we enjoyed singing. She did. She loved singing. Every cookout, we had her sing a song every time. She would sing all day long. Her favorite animal was the hummingbird, the white tiger, and dogs. She loved dogs. We would go on drives. We went to haunted houses together, and yet more singing in the car and laughing. We went to graveyards and told ghost stories. We did the Chinese fire drill with my mother, learning cheers with mom, which she became a cheerleader, and making human totem poles with my dad, searching for lucky eggs at Easter every year that I would find. Going to fairs and riding rides together, you winning those amazing prizes I would beg you to give me. It would be a poster or a favorite band, or a single artist of Tiffany, or a picture of something beautiful. Going to beaches and getting lost in the sand and no worries, no cares, just building a sandcastle. Growing up together and hanging together. You were there helping me all the time when I got hurt. You were generous and loving and caring. In times we lived right next to each other and we became roommates at one time. We sang in church. Some days we would go and hide in our strawberry shortcake box, and no one could find us. In Florida, you would catch lizards and put them on your ear, and then you tried putting them on mine. I was like, no, which I don't want lizards on my ear. You were fun and daring, and a whole lot of spunk. You loved My Little Pony, and you would watch Inspector Gadget and She-Ra with me, and once played Barbies, and had a dream of what we wanted to be. We would take things around the house and wrap them up to give to Mom. Even though she'd be missing her stuff, but she knew. We would take those whole balls and make a game out of it like it was a fair downstairs in the basement. We did so much together.
You take your time, you're doing fine.
She was was there for me when I lost my twins. And then she ended up having twins. And then one day it all stopped. No more memories, no more love, no more hopes and dreams. I never imagined I'd lose my sister so early. I miss talking to you, Amanda. The sticker wars, the flea markets, the Chinese buffet. Our favorite spot. I miss having my sister. I can't believe how short her time was. Never did I think she'd be taken from us. Not this way and not like that. Amanda, I'm sorry. It wasn't what you deserved. You deserved a love and happiness and a good life. You deserve a peaceful and loving life. You were greatly missed. The sleepless nights, the headaches, the pain, the sadness, it never goes away. The rest of my life, I will carry this. And part of me died the day Amanda went missing. For years, we believed it was July 11th, 2017, when Fred's mother sent me a text saying, "No Amanda in the cabin. I hope she's doing okay." Before that message, she had already told me that Amanda and Fred had gotten into an argument and Amanda needed to leave. Ren chose not to help her. From what was reported, the monster killed Amanda July 7th, 2017. Yet Ren waited until July 11th to text me. "No Amanda in the cabin." That alone told me everything I needed to know. I knew something was wrong. The moment the messages came through, my heart dropped. Something inside me broke, and it never healed. Your Honor, there are many sleepless nights, and thoughts of what Fred did to Amanda never ends. This senseless incident should never happen. There were other options. Anything but taking your precious life. Fred Reer is a monster. He killed Amanda and didn't never quit. Her lifeless body, and then had time to destroy the evidence so no one would find her. He has no remorse. He killed her 3 times the way I see it.
All right, let's get it. You know, the good thing in Ohio, there's a choice that people make whether they want to be on camera or not. That's part of the Ohio laws in the courtroom. So the bad side is you don't get to see their face, but then you get to see him. You get to see the defendant there listening as we listen to those words of despair. And all he could do is keep his head down, knowing he's getting a great deal, but he has to still listen. Let's get a break. We'll get you back into that courtroom for more of this sentencing hearing. Amanda Dean lost her life. Her boyfriend now is headed to prison, not as long as he should be, but the family gets the last word.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the latest in the biggest cases from across the country. We're live bringing you expert insight into all of today's new developments.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
The school shooting that broke hearts around the country and broke trust with law enforcement.
Now, the officer sworn to protect those students faces a jury.
The Uvalde school massacre trial. Live coverage this week on Court TV.
TV.
All right, let's head back to the courtroom in Ohio where we're watching a sentencing hearing today. The defendant is a guy by the name of Fred Reer. There he is. Last month, he pled guilty to multiple charges, including involuntary manslaughter in the death of his girlfriend, Amanda Dean. Prosecutors say that he killed Dean, cleaned up the crime scene, disposed of the evidence. Her body's never been found. We're going back into the courtroom now, where we've been listening to victim impact statements. This is Dean's sister. She's opted out to being shown on camera, so we get to hear her and watch him.
We were left with nothing but memories. Everything was probably burned, trashed, or dumped. My heart forever is broken. Fred didn't just take Amanda's life, he destroyed ours. I will never get the closure, I will never feel complete, and I will always carry this anger and sadness. Her death was not an accident. It wasn't an illness, it wasn't a freak accident, it was cold-blooded murder. A pure monster did this. Others need to be protected from this inhumane monster. Amanda did not deserve this. She was a wonderful human being. It kills me every day to think about the pain Amanda went through and the pain that we've had to endure since. Fred dismembered her body, burned her remains for 3 to 4 days, and placed them into a bucket and dumped them in the creek like she's nothing. This is not an action of someone who cared about someone. This is an action of a monster. The lives of the citizens were only added to our suffering for 5.5 years. We were told Amanda was safe while Fred walked free. We knew this wasn't like her. She loved her family. We've lost her presence at birthdays, holidays, life special events. Her beauty, her smile, her laugh, her voice, gone. Amanda's rights were stolen. Her one chance in life was taken. Our rights as her family were violated. When her body was hidden instead of returned to us, Fred's actions were beyond monstrous. He took Amanda's life and our peace. I need water.
Chicks get it for me.
Yes.
Sorry.
Take your time.
Amanda's nieces and nephews will never be the same as they grow up missing their aunt. One of her nephews will never even get the chance to meet her because of what was taken from him. He doesn't even know her. But he sees the pain in our eyes. He hears the cries and feels the heartache with us. When we sit together to eat, he always lifts his cup and says cheers to Amanda. He prays for her. He asks God to bring her back. He tells us how much he loves her, even though he's never met her. He's only 7 years old. He keeps her name alive. with curiosity and love, wanting to know everything good about her. I can't tell Amanda how everyone is doing. She can't see what her children, nieces, and nephews have accomplished. Would she be proud of them? Would she have given them advice that could change their lives? Would she have been there for graduations, future weddings, or secret weddings like me and her was involved in one time? I miss my partner and driving Mom crazy. My sister who did everything with me. We always did the opposite of what people, Mom expected. We love Mom so much, and we always was there for her. She was always there for us, even as a rebel, the rebel that we all were. She loves us unconditionally, and she may have been mad at us, but she loves all her girls. Her nieces and nephews will miss out on her stories, her version of childhood, her memories, her laughter, her lessons.
All right, we'll get a break, but first, joining us from New York, trial attorney Mackenzie Joy Brennan. Mackenzie, Happy New Year to you. This is such a horrible case. This guy seems to be getting away with murder-ish, and that his maximum sentence, he's going to do, we'll see what the judge does at the end, but he's looking at, even if everything's stacked, 14 years. I mean, he killed his girlfriend, chopped her up, and got rid of her body. They believe maybe burned her body over days of time. Oh, and he's going to see the light of day. How does this happen?
It's one of those well, I don't want to say freak because it does happen, but one of those bizarre things in our legal system where, this is what happens when we have set standards for crimes, but put a lot of discretion in the hands of the jury, the fact finders in this case. And obviously everything gets so much more difficult when you have a lag between the trial and the crime itself. Evidence degrades, people forget things, cases become weaker generally the longer that you go on from when something actually happened. And you do hear it every once in a while that somebody is good enough or tight-lipped enough at concealing something that the evidence simply is not there to convict on the murder piece. I do think that there is some mercy here to be shown to the victim's family that, it could be up to 14 years. That is not nothing. And with other flukes of sentencing, sometimes you hear murder sentences themselves coming down to that length. And then obviously non-legal consequences are something to hang your hat on too. This man's life will certainly never be the same, as it shouldn't be. Hireable, probably not ever again. He'll spend many of his good years in prison.
Yeah, and he's going, and he's not, but I mean, 14 years is not a lot considering what they've lost, and her, she lost her entire life. And but you're right, and it's that. What gets me is, okay, they don't know the cause of death because he decimated her body. He got rid of her body, and so you don't have that piece of the puzzle. And then the maximum sentence for that is 2 years, and it seems antiquated. And we went through this with Brian Walsh. We talked about it last hour a little bit, where Walsh, he ended up being found guilty, but his strategy was, let's go for she died mysteriously, and oh yes, I did do that. I chopped her up in little pieces. You see me at the Home Depot, but the exposure there was 1.5 years, and it goes back to the grave digging days where people that's what the law is addressing. People who went into graveyards, tried to get some gold teeth, they did 2 years in prison. It seems like that's off here when connected to a homicide.
I think you're absolutely right. And our legal system and English common law, where we come from, it's all very reactive, not proactive. So our laws tend to take a while to catch up to new technology. And I'd say that new technology plays a lot into having convictions where you have no body. There used to be the adage that you even hear on crime procedurals, like no body, no crime, because especially before the advent of DNA and tech tracking of devices and things like that, it was much harder to ever have enough to convict without a body. Thus, there was only this grave digging sort of square peg into a round hole of what if somebody murders someone and we can prove it and there isn't a body there. So I think that now, given that we are seeing more and more of these types of prosecutions succeeding because there is enough alternative type of very reliable evidence, it might be time to re-examine some of these sentencing brackets and potentially the statutes themselves, which would fall to the legislators.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, abuse of a corpse in relation to a homicide would be a different, we would think, class of felony with a stiffer penalty. We'll see. Coming up, we're going to switch gears and check on Georgia, where our newest live trial, well, we thought they were going to get up and running today in this fascinating case, Sarah Grace Patrick, but it was delayed. Our Kelly Koff's going to update us on that right after the break.
Quote.
Now we're going to turn our attention briefly to Georgia, where we were expecting the murder trial for defendant Sarah Grace Patrick to begin today, but the trial has been continued. The teenager is facing life in prison if convicted of murdering her mother and stepfather, James and Kristen Brock. Prosecutors say that Patrick fatally shot the couple in their home, then allowed her younger sister to find the bodies before calling 911. Joining us now in studio to help preview what was going to be a trial that we've been waiting for. But on the other hand, this was only a year ago, and I guess it shouldn't be a huge shock that this was delayed today. Take us through what happened today in court on the eve of jury selection.
Ted, we had a crew there inside that courtroom just in case it was going to go today, because that's what we had heard, that this trial was going to start today. Now, February 2025, it was just almost a year ago that this double homicide took place. And so we had heard that the trial is going to get underway. We were in place just in case, although as the case was starting this morning and the hearing was beginning, we had heard some rumblings that it is very possible the case may end up being delayed. And then we reported some breaking news this morning. It was about 10 a.m. We had heard the case now is going to be continued. And why is this happening? It's really because of this psychological evaluation. So defense counsel had requested a psychological evaluation of 17-year-old Sarah Grace Patrick, the defendant in this case. They had a doctor who met with Sarah numerous times. That preliminary report of all of those meetings was handed to counsel on December 31st. So just days ago. That's the first time that they've even seen a preliminary report. This report has not been finalized yet. That was the basis as to why the state then requested a continuance this morning. Let's go ahead and listen to the state make that motion.
At county call on December 16th, Ms. Williams and the state both indicated that the report regarding the psychological evaluation, the neuropsychological evaluation, was not back yet. On December the 31st, we did receive a preliminary draft of the report from Ms. Williams, but as of right now, we still don't have the final copy of that draft. And after just reading the preliminary draft, the state does believe that we need to evaluate that to retain our own expert in that matter. So at this point, because of that, like I said, on December the 16th, how we might need to evaluate that for an expert report, the state is going to be asking for a continuance in this matter.
So you heard the state there asking for that continuance. Ted, these reports are very detailed, very long. The state, after even just seeing this prelim report, they now want to have their own experts, of course, take a look at it, because attorneys are not psychologists. They don't know and can't understand the entirety of these reports. So they want their own experts to take a look at it. And even we heard them say there, we may have played that clip talking about they do plan to rebut a lot of the findings. Even that's in the preliminary, they don't even see the final yet.
A couple things that play. This was she was 16 at the time of the murders, but she's being tried as an adult. That adds a little complexity into the equation here in terms of her evaluation or mental evaluation. So you would think that that's going to take some time to digest from a prosecution standpoint to address a trial. So, yeah, you get that delay. What about bail? And, you know, she was emotional today when she found out she wasn't going home.
Yeah, definitely. Well, she was denied bond a while ago, so they had this hearing, and she wanted to be released. Of course, her defense counsel made a motion saying that she's not a flight risk. She's not going to be intimidating witnesses, harming others. The state, of course, made some arguments otherwise, and the judge ended up not granting bond for her, bail for her. So she has been behind bars today. Again, very emotional. She was emotional during that hearing as well. So what happened today is the judge now set a new trial date. So that trial date now is scheduled for August 3rd. Why don't we go ahead and play a little clip from when the judge made that announcement saying when the new trial date is scheduled.
Based on what's been presented for me today, I will place this on, I believe it's August 3rd. We'll place this on August 3rd. And with the understanding that if I'm going to bypass 2 trial weeks in order to get there, I'm bypassing 2 days that I could set it on, right? But by doing that, I'm giving defense and state all the time that you could possibly need to have this case ready. And August 3rd needs to be our day. We need to come in August 3rd, ready to pick a jury. All right? Everyone's on the same page.
Yes, sir. So August 3rd, the new trial date there in Georgia for the case of Sarah Grace. Patrick defense counsel objected to this motion for continuance by the state, saying they are ready to proceed. But the judge had really did the right thing in this situation because, again, that report has not been finalized, and that's going to impact the strategy from both perspectives, defense counsel as well as the prosecution. And I also wanted to point out we did, as I mentioned, have the crew inside the courtroom today just in case the trial was to proceed. And behind the prosecutorial side, the state side, it was packed. Lots of people. From the way it was described to me inside that courtroom, very lonely on the defendant's side. No one really there showing support for her.
Yeah, initially, after she was arrested, there was a lot of family support, but now I'm sure as time's gone by and the evidence has fallen into place, that has changed.
Yes.
Fascinating case. We're going to have to wait till August. Kelly, thank you. Let's head back to Ohio. We're watching the sentencing hearing for Fred Reer. He has admitted that he not only murdered his girlfriend, but he decimated and he chopped up her body, basically. They never found her. They don't know how she died. So because of that, he's facing a maximum of 14 years in prison. Seems like a travesty. Victim family members, though, do have the opportunity to address him, and that's what we're watching play out right now.
Had the best potato salad that she had made, the most amazing food that she cooked. We can't build new memories, new stories to share when we grow old. Mom didn't deserve to lose her daughter. She wanted more for our love and wanted to grow old with all her daughters, not to have to bury one. Oh wait, she can't even do that. She can't bury her own daughter because we were lied to for so long. My mother had to suffer repeatedly, 8 years of suffering. 8. A wonderful, loving mother. Without knowing where her daughter is, and still don't know. She has nothing of her daughter. We have nothing of her. Not even a frame of her body. This is so wrong. Where Fred gets to see his mom. Fred gets to talk to his mom. Fred gets to write his mom. Fred gets to hug his mom. Amanda will never be able to call her best friend JP. The last of their little group. JP was her person. They did so much together. They loved hearing stories and adventures and talks shared by JP. She is just as hurt and angry as the rest of us because Amanda, to her, was family too. Amanda was JP's best friend. She never had another best friend, just Jenny. They were like peas and carrots. They were always there for each other. Their friendship was the best. I know she feels empty because that's how we feel too. Amanda was an artist. Who knows what she could have created? Would she paint something that changed someone's perspectives? Would she have made art that touched people's hearts? She was a singer with a beautiful voice. Would she have made it on America's Got Talent? Would she have inspired people by her music? The monster took every possibility from her. He stole every chance she had to make a difference, to spend with her boys. All these years, her boys won't even have that chance. I can't even imagine as a mother if something happened to my boys. The question that haunts me is, Fred took her life. Does she have time to get right with God? Did he not only take her life, did he take the chance to repent? The question will stay with me forever. If this was your family, I want everyone to think about this. What if this was your daughter, your mother, your sister, your friend, your aunt, your grandmother? Someone who loves so dearly. Amanda doesn't even know she's got grandkids. We are ordinary.
All right, coming up, nearly 4 years after one of the deadliest school shootings in American history, a responding officer on trial for the slow response to kill the shooter. Matt Johnson's going to join us. It's the case out of Texas. It's Uvalde. You remember this. Now it's time for a criminal trial. He's going to be in studio, set us up for a preview right after the break.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the latest in the biggest cases from across the country. We're live bringing you expert insight into all of today's new developments.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
The school shooting that broke hearts around the country and broke trust with law enforcement.
Now, the officer sworn to protect those students faces a jury.
The Uvalde school massacre trial. Live coverage this week on Court TV. Easy.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. In Texas, jury selection is underway today in the Uvalde school massacre trial. The defendant here and former school police officer Adrian Gonzalez is accused of placing more than 24 children in danger by failing to respond to the shooting sooner. For the latest on the trial and jury selection, Court TV crime and justice correspondent Matt Johnson is live with us in studio. A case that was so heartbreaking when it happened, and here we are years later, seeing somebody being potentially held accountable.
Yeah, potentially. This is a case that has shocked the nation when it happened. Jury selection underway right now in the criminal case against Adrian Gonzalez, the former school officer prosecutors say was one of the first on the scene, but chose not to confront the active school shooter. This happened back in 2022 at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. It took more than an hour before police moved in and neutralized the shooter, killing him. The shooting left 19 students, 2 teachers dead, and one of the biggest pieces of evidence, you're looking at it right there, that body camera video, and it's tough to watch.
Shots fired in the building. I heard somebody say someone shot in the head. Which building? I don't know. They haven't said anything. Hey, we going in or we staying here? What are we doing? Let's set up perimeter, bro. He's in the class. Dude, why got shots fired? We're gonna be in the building, the west side. Dude, we gotta get in there. We gotta get in there and just keep shooting.
The trial moved from Uvalde to Corpus Christi, Texas, after the defense had argued that the defendant couldn't get a fair trial. Opening statements expected tomorrow, and that was no surprise, Ted, because there is monuments and memorials around that entire community. It's a small community there in Texas, including one next to the school, and there's also murals in that community.
Yeah, and you think about everybody in not only that community, but in the surrounding area had to be touched by this. So many families affected, so it makes sense. That's what change of venue is for. What about the charges here?
Well, a lot of victims and a lot of charges. The victims' families have attended most of the pre-trial hearings leading up to this point over the past 3.5 years. There you go, right there. 19 children, all fourth graders killed, including 2 teachers also murdered. And then there was 17 others, survivors who were injured. They're likely to testify. The defendant is 52-year-old former officer Adrian Gonzalez, facing 29 counts of child endangerment and abandonment, with a possible sentence of 58 years behind bars if convicted of all the charges. The former Uvalde Schools police chief has also been charged in the case. His trial date not yet been set. They are the only 2 facing charges in this case as of now. But again, this prosecution team, that district attorney has to be watching this case very closely to see if other charges will be pending.
Yeah, it's a difficult case all around. And you know, those decisions that were made there, armchair quarterbacking, of course. Like, why didn't you go in? There's more to the story, and we'll watch it all play out during the trial. Matt, thank you, as always. Let's head back to Ohio now. We're watching the sentencing hearing for Fred Reer. Let's go back into the courtroom. More of the victim impact statements from the victim, Amanda Dean's family.
And I truly believe that if this had been the daughter of someone who was more powerful, Fred would never, ever see the light of day. Ever. But Amanda's life mattered just as much. Her future mattered. Her dreams mattered. Her family mattered. Amanda Dean's life mattered and will always matter. I'm sorry. Justice should not depend on who you are, only what was done. My final words. Fred, do not think for a minute that you hold power because you took Amanda's life. You hold nothing. But hell does await you. I will see Amanda again, where you will be miserable and alone, surrounded by darkness. Everyone else will know. We all deserve hell. Jesus saved me. And Jesus is with me here today. He wants me to forgive you. And let God deal with you. Even I know you could be saved if you truly repent and turn to Jesus. What you did is inexcusable, though. The most horrific thing a demon could do. You deserve to spend the rest of your existence in prison because of the depths you went in order to get rid of Amanda, my sister, who was a mother, a daughter, an aunt, a cousin, a human being. You killed her not once, but 3 times. Justice would be you spending the rest of your life in prison. Anything else, it would be injustice. Amanda deserved to live. She She deserved to grow old. She deserved to choose her own life. She deserved love, safety, and peace. We will carry this loss for the rest of our lives. Judge Conway, thank you that you sentenced Fred Reer to the maximum allowed in the law for each count served consecutively. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
We do appreciate you being here this morning and sharing all those memories with us. Hopefully you'll continue to carry those with you and share them with the other folks in your family as you try to move forward. Thank you.
Your Honor, the sons of Amanda Dean.
All right, these are the victim family members' sons there. It's a gut-wrencher. When we come back after the break, we'll have more sentencing in the Fred Reer case, plus lots of other things that we're monitoring today, including Georgia. Sarah Grace Parker continued. But right now, we're going to head back to this one, Fred Reer. Stay with us.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala, and we are tracking several cases here at Court TV. In Georgia, the highly anticipated trial of Sarah Grace Patrick, the teen accused of shooting her mom and stepdad, has now been continued to August 3rd. And in Texas, jury selection remains underway for Adrian Gonzalez. He's the former school officer accused of failing to respond during the deadly Uvalde shooting. And in Ohio, we are bringing you the sentencing hearing for Frederick Reer, who pleaded guilty to killing his girlfriend nearly a decade ago. Now, before we get you back into court, I'm going to take you to Court TV anchor Judge Ashley Wilcott with a closer look at the case.
On July 11, 2017, 36-year-old mother of four Amanda Dean went missing. When the family attempted to find Dean, the sheriff's office claimed Dean was in a domestic violence shelter.
He had told her that he had jumped through hoops, but they found Amanda and she's safe in a safe home. I just know she would not. She would not leave her family.
Dean was last heard from in a text message with her sister, and her family didn't believe she would stop communicating with them and began questioning if something more was going on.
He started getting violent with her, black eyes. I mean, these were things that were reported to the sheriff.
We were actually going to remove her from that home.
Dean was in an abusive relationship with her on and off again boyfriend, Frederick Reer. Prosecutors now say that Dean was dead since going missing back in 2017.
For a very long time, he had been the suspect in the case. Most people in my 33 years, when you go to place them under arrest for something, they really want to know what it's for. He did not ask, and I find that highly unusual and suspect.
According to the indictment, Reer allegedly killed Amanda Dean the day she disappeared, dismembering the remains of her body and burning the mattress she died on.
This family had asked for answers for years under the assumption that she was alive, but she wasn't. The second the BCI got involved in this case, everything seemed to turn for the better. And 414 days later, we got an indictment on this case.
All right, I want to get you back into court now for more of today's sentencing. It has been extremely emotional thus far, and right now, the court is hearing victim impact statements from family and friends of Amanda Dean. Let's get back to it.
You're speaking for Sam. Okay, if you can spell it, not your name, spell anything for the court of order. I'll let the judge know you're speaking for.
If you give your name for the record.
Yeah, my name's Devin Alton, D-E-V-A-N-A-L-T-H-E-N. And I'm speaking on behalf of Sam, Amanda's son.
All right, please go ahead.
I struggle to express what I feel in losing my mom. I'm deeply angry for the years of thinking my mom had abandoned us, my brother and I. But she had not left us willingly. You killed her. I will never get another day with my mother because of you and your heinous actions. I can't ask my mom for advice or help or for a hug. She's gone. My life forever changed the day you killed her. I only wish the worst for you. I hope you remember every detail of what you did to her, every hour of every day, until your life is over. I ask you, Judge Conway, that Fred Reer be sentenced the maximum sentence allowable under the law. Anything else would be unfair to myself and my brothers, my grandma, and our family. My mother was not shown any mercy. Why should he be? I request the maximum amount of prison time. Thank you.
All right, I want to thank each of the boys for being here today. I did read your statements individually as well. I haven't had a chance to hear what you had to say individually as well. Thank you.
Hello, I'm David Dean, son of Amanda. I struggled to figure out what I wanted to say on the stand. It's just hard not having her around, never getting to know her, and thanks to him, I'll never have a piece of her with me ever again. I spent a lot of time thinking about this, but I really don't have anything else to say. It's just gonna hurt for the rest of my life.
I know it's difficult, and I appreciate you being here as well.
Thank you.
And Your Honor, Chief John LaJoy to speak on behalf of one of the sons.
Chief, go ahead.
Good morning, Your Honor. Thanks for the opportunity today. These are the words from Jacob Dean to this court. I'm not really good with words, so I'll keep this short. She wasn't really around much, nor was she really there for me when I needed her, but I know she loved me. She loved every one of my brothers, and it hurts to know that she won't be able to see me when I get married, start a family, or just be there for me when I need her the most. That's all I ever wanted, was to see her. I wanted to know she was proud of me and what I've accomplished in life so far. And that will never happen because of that man. He robbed me and her of the love I could have gotten from her. I'm not the one to say how I feel or really express it. I just wish she was here. I wish I could see her. I wish I could see her one last time. But that will never happen because of that man. I just want my mother back. But that can never happen. I just wanted to tell her how much I loved and cared about her. I know that one day I will be able to see her again. And when that day comes, I'll be ready. I love you, Mom. Rest in peace with the angels above. I will always remember you. Some memories of her as much as I can remember anyway. Love you, Mom, forever and always. Jacob D. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Again, thank you to all the sons for being here today.
Yeah. Hello, Your Honor.
Oh, sure.
Sorry. My name is Joshua Dean. I had something to write out beforehand. I had my impact statement. From what I can see, we've been here over a year, and unfortunately, I've looked over there every single time, and he shows no remorse for anything that he's done. He acts like he could care less to be here. He'd rather talk about the books in jail than trying to fight and prove that what he did or didn't do. I hope you give him a max. It's what he deserves. He When I used to come around there, he was a jerk. He treated not only my mom bad, but me bad. I wish I could say I'm sad today. I'm not. I'm angry that we've had to go through this all this time and still just not care, not act like he could give a care about anything. Me and my brothers won't. We don't have that anymore. We don't have a mom to go to. She was the first person I went to when I was upset, depressed, sad, anything like that. She was the first person I went to. I don't have that anymore. She won't be able to see any of us. She never saw any of us graduate. My brothers were still in middle school and freshmen in high school. I had just graduated. She wasn't able to make it to that. She's not going to be able to make it when we get married. She's not going to be able to see any of her grandkids when we have them. I have some right now. I have kids. She won't be able to see that. She won't be able to meet anybody anymore. Again, over the years that we've been coming to these, every single time, he sits there, rolls his eyes, acts like he's... I don't know. I'm sorry. It frustrates me that it's taken this long, that this has been going on for this long. I love and miss my mom. She was my best friend. And it hurts knowing that none of my brothers will get to see her ever again. I won't be able to see her ever again. No one will be able to see her ever again. And he acts like it's fine. Even right now. He's just looking down. He's acting like he could care less. That's it. I'm sorry. I appreciate your time.
I appreciate yours as well. I do want to express to all of you, I understand the frustration with the length of time that this has taken to get here. Certainly on the court's end of that, I believe the prosecution did a nice job of going out of their way to keep in contact with the family. I think that you've all done a fabulous job of working with them and showing patience in getting through this process. I appreciate it.
And I do appreciate it. I do. It's not on you.
Oh.
I get it.
Very good. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your time.
All right, so the victim's son there talking about the time. Justice delayed sometimes has consequences, but the judge addressing that to him and him accepting anything or the apology by the judge. All right. We'll take a break. That was actually the last victim impact statement the court heard. The judge goes on to acknowledge the fact that he received a number of letters as well. Those won't be read onto the record at this time. When we come back, we're going to hear from the prosecution. They're going to make their case for the maximum for this defendant. So keep it here on Court TV.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the latest in the biggest cases from across the country. We're live bringing you expert insight into all of today's new developments.
Closing Arguments tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
The school shooting that broke hearts around the country and broke trust with law enforcement.
Now, the officer sworn to protect those students faces a jury.
The Uvalde school massacre trial. Live coverage this week on Court TV.
Shopping spree.
All right, folks, back now to Ohio, where sentencing is underway for a man who admits to killing his girlfriend almost a decade ago. Now, Frederick Reer pleaded guilty last month ahead of his trial in 2017 in the death of his girlfriend, Amanda Dean. The two were in an abusive relationship, and police initially believed that Dean was in a shelter at the time that she went missing. I'm going to get you back into court now, where the prosecution is arguing for the maximum sentence for Reer.
Have anyone else?
Yes, Your Honor.
Coming forward, who do we have next?
Me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I meant from the...
No, we're done. That concludes the presentation from
I
you.
do want to say that to the family that's here and the friends, again, I did review all of the victim impact statements that were sent in. They certainly contain a collection of similar experiences and memories from your family and friends of Amanda going forward, and express very similar concerns with today's proceedings. So I just want you to know I've seen those. Now, on behalf of the state, Mr. Caceres.
Thank you, Your Honor.
I have done my best to take Stephanie to safety. The second time, may I remind you, I'm very, very happy and overwhelmed that we have a new baby. I have a new baby too. But I have to go again. I wish that I have done my best to take Stephanie and her new baby. For the second time, may I remind you? Okay. I apologize for the sneer. I'm very, very happy and overwhelmed that we have a new baby. I have a new baby niece. So, but I have to go and get my son. So, but I wish the best. And well, do we want to take a picture of you? Very beautiful. Yeah, here.
Your Honor, we don't have very many clips of Amanda Dean. I wanted you to hear her voice, hear what she sounded like. We'll never see her again, listen to her again, talk to her again. You can't even visit a gravesite. Fred Reer pled guilty, Your Honor. One count of involuntary manslaughter, one count of tampering with evidence, 2 counts of tampering with evidence, and 1 count of abuse of a corpse. The abuse of a corpse deals with a different desecration of Amanda Dean's body than the tampering with evidence does. The parties have agreed that these are separate offenses that could be sentenced separately. I must notify the court the defendant did cooperate with law enforcement after he was provided with discovery in this case. After 2 years of searching, we've not been able to locate the remains of Amanda Dean. A substantial effort was put into that. The defendant did cooperate with that, but we have not been able to find any remains of Amanda Dean. No body, Judge, means no cause of death, means no manner of death. There's Amanda with her kids. But we know that as of July 7th or July 8th, 2017, she was dead. And according to Sergeant Timko, we know that the defendant removed her remains so they could not be found. Amanda Dean had a mother, Carolyn Tokar. Her siblings, she had a brother, 2 sisters. She had 4 kids. She lived with Fred Reer in a cabin on Wells Road in Townsend Township in Huron County, Ohio. And there's a picture of the cabin, and there's a picture of the entranceway into the cabin and the bedroom. According to a neighbor, when Amanda Dean lived in the cabin, the shed was carpeted. There was carpet in the cabin. That carpet was removed sometime after July of 2017. The Amanda Dean and Fred Reer relationship. I've discussed the relationships, and you've heard about the relationships that Amanda had with her sons, with her sister, with her mother. The Amanda Fred relationship was a love-hate relationship, Judge. They met at Olive Garden. They began a relationship in the mid-2000 teens. It ended. Amanda moved to South Carolina. In 2016, she came back from South Carolina, and the relationship started again. The relationship was rocky, and it was not healthy. And as Frederick Reer, the defendant's mother herself stated, they were not good together. People saw and witnessed this turbulent relationship. Josh Dean, the son of Amanda. Josh Dean stated he witnessed Fred hitting his mother as well as being threatened by Fred himself. Josh would go to the Wells Road address and visit his mom. Fred would get in his face and threaten him. Josh was 16 or 17 at the time. Shannon and Tom Schofield, they're friends of the Reers. The Reers allowed the Schofields to store property on the Reer property. According to Shannon Schofield, around July 5th or July 6th, Amanda messaged her on Facebook, asking her to pick her up when she got off work at 8 o'clock. Later, Amanda messaged Shannon Schofield, telling Shannon, don't come here, it won't be good for me. This is the last time that Shannon heard from Amanda Dean. Shannon still has the messages. Shannon stated that Fred would take Amanda's phone. When Fred would pass out, actually Amanda didn't have a phone. When Fred would pass out, Amanda would take Fred's phone and message her because her phone had been destroyed. At the end of the conversations, Amanda would tell Shannon, and she'd also tell her sister, Shannon, delete the messages. I can't have him knowing that we're talking. Melanie Boseman, a friend of Shannon, a friend of Amanda Dean, who lived in South Carolina with Amanda. Melanie Boseman gave a couple statements to Agent John Soraya. I know, Melanie, you will come looking for me if I get missing. If I did, look at Fred. Look at Fred if I get missing. Those are the words of Amanda Dean to Melanie Boseman. Melanie Boseman then said that Dean was scared for her life because of Fred Reer. When Amanda Dean showed up in South Carolina, she had to sneak away to escape Fred Reer. But while she was there, Fred Reer blew up the telephone, swearing her, telling her, threatening bodily harm to her. Dean had told Melanie Boseman that Fred had threatened to kill her more than once, and she believed he would do it. Melanie Boseman described the Dean and her relationship.
We approach. You may.
All right, so as they go to that sidebar, I want to take this opportunity to bring in our guest for this hour. Joining us, criminal defense attorney and former police officer Joe Hennessy. Joe, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today on the program. And I want to begin with the arguments being made by the prosecution as they're sort of sketching out the case against this defendant at this hearing. I have to wonder why they decided to make the decision to accept a plea deal for involuntary manslaughter. Case seems very straightforward, seems strong, and again, they're just sketching out what they had on this guy. So talk to our viewers a little bit about what might have led prosecutors to make the decision they did to accept this particular plea deal.
Well, the issue might have been that they don't have the cause of death. So you can't make a claim for a first-degree or a second-degree murder. They're locking him into something that he is going to be definitely serving a sentence for, and that's probably why the district attorney chose to accept the involuntary manslaughter.
Yeah, fair enough. And when you look at a particular case like this, when you listen to the victim impact statements, the thing that seems to have affected these family members to a great degree is the fact that what he did to the body and the fact that it robbed them of the opportunity to see her one last time, to say goodbye to her that last time, and just the desecration of a human body. Yet, when we look at what he's charged with, tampering with evidence and abuse of a corpse, maximums 2 years and 1 year respectively, one has to look at the law and say maybe they need to make some changes, because when we talk about abuse of a corpse, it really just applies to certain situations, mostly grave diggers or grave robbers, as it were. Maybe something more serious needs to be done about these particular crimes.
I would definitely agree. This case reminds me of the Brian Walsh case in Massachusetts recently, where he desecrated the remains of his wife, and this is what we have here. And I think that the district attorney here is trying to make an argument where he will receive consecutive sentences.
Yeah, they're trying to get as much as possible. I think the maximum under all these charges is maybe 14, 15, 16 years, something in that range, which again, doesn't seem like it quite fits under the circumstances. All right, stand by, folks. We are going to take a break.
I definitely agree with you.
Yeah, okay, I'm sorry to cut you off there, Joe, but we do have to go to break. But yes, I'd certainly hear you. You agree with me on that. All right, before we head to break, folks, I do have a quick update on an ongoing manhunt going on in Columbus, Ohio. Police are searching for whomever shot and killed a respected dentist and his wife. Now, officers discovered the bodies of Dr. Spencer Tepe and his wife Monique at their home on Tuesday following a welfare check. The couple's children were also found unharmed. Now, investigators say there were no signs of forced entry and no weapon found at the scene, which basically rules out a murder-suicide. Now, the concern started when Dr. Tepe missed work for the first time. His colleague became concerned and then called 911. And then moments later, a friend arrived at the scene.
There's a body. Our friend wasn't answering his phone. We just took a wellness check. We just came here, and he appears dead.
Okay.
There's blood. He's laying next to his bed, off of his bed, and there's blood. I can't get closer to see more than that.
Okay, so you can tell he's obviously not breathing or anything?
Yeah.
Is it like kind of like you know, does he look like...
It doesn't puddle, but I can't look.
Okay, all right, I understand. Okay.
All right, we're going to continue to monitor that case and bring you any updates as we get them. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with more right after the break.
Now.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. We are in Ohio this afternoon for the sentencing of Frederick Reer. Now, Reer pleaded guilty to charges of involuntary manslaughter, tampering with evidence, and abuse of a corpse in the death of his girlfriend, Amanda Dean. The 36-year-old mother of four was last seen in July of 2017, and her body has never been found. Let's head back inside that courtroom now. The prosecution is continuing to make their case for a maximum sentence.
Mr. Sears, you're making it. Fred Reer controlled what Amanda did and when she did it. Then there's the relationship between Shannon Dean and Amanda Dean. It was a good relationship, unlike what some people have portrayed it. It's a loving relationship. We have text messages from Amanda Dean using Fred's phone to Shannon Dean. Case 6, just stole my phone. He's sleeping. No phone yet. We got a hold of Tony's number in my old phone. So between you and racist, I love you. I didn't tell him everything. WTF. He thinks I'm cheating with Tony, so all hell broke loose. He pretended to be me, and Tony said he still loves me. He went crazy. I really hate all this drama. I'm sorry about how he talks to you. Just know it isn't anything to do with me. Please don't let him scare you off. That's what he's trying to do. I love you. I will talk to you soon. Don't text back. I'm erasing XXX. In an undated message after June 10th, 2017. Still here. Fred took me, he dropped me off so I can hitchhike. Then waited there until he talked me back into coming back here so I can be tortured more by him. Oh yeah, wow. Geneva, that's her aunt, says it's okay. She was talking about moving in with Aunt Geneva. Shannon's reply, I'll ask her bit. I want to make sure you're going to leave before I do. There's more text messages between Amanda Dean and Shannon Dean. Fred's inside the house and left his phone out here. I have it. I'm okay now, I think. I sleep all the time. I sleep all the time that I can. That was on June 25th, 2017. Hey sis, stole his phone for a minute. Please come see me. He works all day, 6 to 5 to 6. Please, I need help. He won't get me any food or cigs. He's punishing me for taking the van. Please, sis, I need help. Amanda also sent us a picture of what Fred was doing. Heroin. The focus here, Your Honor, is the month of July 2017. There's a calendar on the screen so you can see that July 7th was a Friday, July 8th was a Saturday, July 11th is a Tuesday. June 30th would be a Friday. On June 30th, Shannon Dean messages Amanda, telling her at Fred Reer's phone, Amanda, this is my new phone number. Now, Shannon Dean was also messaging Fred's mother, Lorinda, also known as Frederick Reer. And these messages came from the cell phone provider for Shannon Dean. The cell phone records were subpoenaed. The text messages were subpoenaed. I think it was Text Now. And that's where these records came from. Frederick Reer messages Shannon Dean. Oh, I'm sorry. Must have been her stepdad. Things aren't good here. I asked Fred to leave. You have a job. Go. I no longer need drama. He left and is no longer coming back. This is Frederick Reer telling Shannon Dean on June 30th that she threw Fred out of the house. I asked my son to leave. I've asked my son to leave last time. Grow up and get out. Please, it has to be tonight. That's June 30th. Thank you. She is a good person. June 30th again. Frederick Reer messages Shannon Dean. More and hate to bother you, but my son's no longer here. I can't take someone I care about to a homeless shelter, talking about Amanda. They do weird things to women. I would never want that for Amanda. I will take care of her till Wednesday, or if they get back together, then they need to move and grow up. I do care of Amanda and don't want anything bad to happen to her. She's a good person, has a good heart. I know you played this fool like mine, so I'm sorry to bother you. Hope you have a good day. That's June 30th. On July 4th, Shannon Dean gets into a message battle with Fred Reer. Fred Reer tells Shannon Dean she's fine, I'm taking care of her. I'm taking care of her since I alone love her. She has a place tomorrow. You're just a dumbass. And this is Shannon Dean replying to Fred Reer, telling Shannon that he's taking care of Amanda. She has a place tomorrow. You're just a dumbass, and nothing you call that love. Your definition of love is ridiculous. You have no clue what love is. Fred Reer responds, listen, cunt, she's staying here, she's fine, and you go fuck yourself and get off my dick. You have wanting to put Amanda in the shelter. She's better off with me. At the end of the conversation on July 4th, Frederick tells Shannon Dean, whatever, I control everything around here. She's not allowed. She's not allowed to go to a shelter. Amanda Dean got a hold of Lorinda Reer's phone, messages Shannon Dean, and tells Shannon Dean, hey sis, I'm okay. I got Frederick Reer's phone. I'm fine. I don't have to leave. I can stay here now. That's July 5th. July 11th. This was referenced by Shannon Dean in her sentencing speech. At 6:52 on July 11th, she gets a message from Frederick Reer. Walked out to the cabin and know Amanda. How's she doing? I won't bother you, just checking up on her. Like I said, she's a good kid. Just her and Fred aren't good together. She needs a decent man in her life, along with her family by her side. Please give her a hug for me and Paul. He's concerned about her. Paul is the defendant's brother. Amanda has always been good to Paul, and I, as his mother, really appreciate it. It takes special people. It takes special people to be with the handicapped world. Thank you. I will not bother. You or Amanda, I was just checking up on her. Thank you. That's how.
Now, if you didn't know any better, you would think this was a closing argument at a murder trial rather than a sentencing for involuntary manslaughter. Pretty interesting to listen to this now. Well, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll have more of that closing argument by the prosecution and the sentencing hearing for Frederick Reer. Keep it here on Court TV.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the latest in the biggest cases from across the country. We're live bringing you expert insight into all of today's new developments.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
The school shooting that broke hearts around the country and broke trust with law enforcement.
Now, the officer sworn to protect those students faces a jury.
The Uvalde school massacre trial. Live coverage this week on Court TV.
Great.
All right, folks, now back to sentencing in the disappearance of Amanda Dean case in Ohio. Defendant Frederick Reer pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter in the death of his girlfriend, Amanda Dean. The 36-year-old mother of four disappeared in 2017. Her body has never been found. I want to get you back into court now for more of that state's closing arguments or closing remarks ahead of sentencing.
That's how Shannon Dean found out that Amanda was no longer on Wellsworth. So Shannon Dean's response was, so Fred killed her? Because I have no clue. Okay, getting the law to scope this out. I will be there with all the stuff, with the sheriff. Shannon Dean did that. The sheriff's department was notified, and a search for Amanda began. That search was then called off. Anybody asserts that the Dean family in any way was involved in this, Your Honor, they're grossly mistaken. Since July of 2017, there's been no social media activity by Amanda Dean, no social welfare programs utilized, no contact with family, no vehicle, no driver's license renewal, no voting record, no social security activity, no welfare activity. She missed an important court date in South Carolina where she was a victim of a crime. Nothing. In late 2022, the Huron County Sheriff's Department handed over the Amanda Dean investigation to BCI and John Soraya, the man to my right. John was tasked with finding out what happened to Amanda Dean. John immediately had Amanda declared missing so that there would be a nationwide alert for Amanda. John began to interview friends, family, and associates of Amanda Dean. Years later, we found out that she was dead. What did John learn? He learned from Alan McGuinn, a former fire chief, Townsend Township, that he believed the burial location was behind the house. He said there was a burn pile 75 feet from the house, and the burn pile is on the top of a burial site. Stacy Johnson. Again, Your Honor, we don't have the manner of death or cause of death, so we really don't know how Amanda Dean died. The defendant was in a strangulation sex. This confirmed by others. Amanda Dean was into it too. Jessica Souslin. Jessica Souslin was interviewed by John Soraya a couple times, and John and I flew out to South Dakota and interviewed her out there too. Jessica Souslin had a conversation with Fred Reer. Fred Reer said, you know, I woke up, she was dead. Jessica says, what are you talking about? Fred says, Amanda. Jessica says, why didn't you call 911? Fred says, I panicked. Jessica Salzman. They can tell. Why would you do that, Fred? You know what it's like to cut through human bone? Jessica, no, I don't. Jessica Salzman said that, according to Jessica, Fred said that he woke up and found Amanda dead, that he had heroin in his pocket. He portrayed that Amanda had overdosed on the heroin. Sometime in Florida, 4 or 6 months later, Fred calls Jessica Salzman and says, hey, I burned the mattress on the burn pile. Jessica stated that there was a burn pile at the family farm. According to Jessica believed that he cut Amanda, he dismembered Amanda Dean and then burned her body. Ryan Sternberg, cousin of the defendant. According to Ryan Sternberg, the defendant admitted to him that he killed Amanda Dean. Travis Kovach said that in July of 2017, when Amanda Dean went missing, there was a strong, god-awful smell around the Reer property, likened it to roadkill. It was in the summer when the smell was around. Chad Holbrook, I know the court is aware of Mr. Holbrook. Chad stated that he knew Fred Reer and stated that Reer told him, you can burn a body. You need a 55-gallon drum and keep feeding the fire. Holbrook had seen Dean with bruises many times. He said about the time that Amanda Dean went missing, again, there was that awful smell of the Reer property. So that Reer was very jealous of Amanda Dean. Gerald Hunter in July of 2017 was at the cabin, and this forms the basis of in addition to what Jessica Salzman told us, of some of the tampering with evidence counts. Fred and Amanda were fighting. Fred threatened to harm Amanda. The next day he went back to buy cocaine. Fred would not allow him inside the cabin. He said he saw a bloody mattress in the cabin, bloody rags outside the cabin, blood in a bucket. He said that Amanda Dean died in the cabin. Then there's Paul Reer, the brother of Fred.
He does very well. He does. He does. He's not allowed to. I know. You've raised him very well. So I'd like to just, Linda, I'd like, if you would walk with us, please. I'd like to, and that's what are you okay? Okay. I just want to, so, Paul, can you show me where Amanda stayed when she was here? Can you walk with me over there? Okay. Be careful. You okay? Yep. Okay. Good job. It's nice out today. So here? Yeah. Amanda stayed here? Yeah. Okay. Who else? Did Fred stay here? Yep. Fred stayed here. Okay. Where was the bedroom? Do you know? Back there?
Yep. I like Amanda, and so did Paul. Okay. We don't have nothing bad to say.
Okay.
Also speaking of Frederick Reer,
he would never harm anybody. My gosh, Paul is the most funniest fire.
We are not suggesting that at all.
Okay.
That's not.
No. You wouldn't even hurt a cat.
Yeah.
It's okay, buddy. Wanna go back to the house?
You want to go back there?
We gotta put the battery on, don't we?
What's back there?
Your chain. Go ahead, chain it
the
up.
Mower?
Take it out there.
Okay. Yeah, you pull it and it doesn't go?
No.
Battery dead?
Yeah.
Okay.
He's all driving in the field.
Okay. Will you show me your truck? I'd like to see it. Can you walk me back there?
Yeah.
Oh, don't go that way. Let's go this way. There's a lot of pricker bushes over there. And I don't want you, just watch your step. I think it's, and your camper you told me about is back here. Ah, there's your truck. Yeah? Is that your camper?
No.
That's not your camper?
No.
No? Oh, don't, let's go this way. Be careful.
All right, as we come to the top of the hour, I want to quickly bring back in our guest, still with us, criminal defense attorney, former police officer Joe Hennessy. And Joe, and quickly, we heard many family members talk about what they perceive to be a lack of remorse on the part of the defendant, but we also heard, interestingly, from the prosecutor that he did try to help them find the body, to no avail, obviously, but he was cooperative. Last thoughts on this case and what the judge might do?
So the judge is going to take into consideration his cooperation. But he's also going to take into consideration the lack of the body. And I think that district attorney is trying to lay the groundwork for that consecutive sentence here.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, he's laying out a good case for a murder conviction to me. So again, you talked about Brian Walsh. Brian Walsh was convicted pretty much under the same circumstances. We don't know how his wife, Anna Walsh, died, but again, he was convicted of murder. But this is the decision by this particular prosecutor. All right, Joe, thank you so much for being with me tonight. Truly appreciate it. Folks, I want you to stick around because coming up, we're going to check in on Georgia, where one of our newest live trials for 2026 has actually been delayed. Court TV's own Kelly Craft has an update on the deadly teen daughter trial after the break. Keep it here on Court TV. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. Court TV is in Ohio this afternoon, where we're following today's sentencing hearing for Frederick Reer. Last month, Reer pleaded guilty to multiple charges, including involuntary manslaughter in the death of his girlfriend, Amanda Dean. Prosecutors say he killed Dean, then cleaned up the crime scene and disposed of the evidence, and her body was never found. We're going to take you back there in just a moment, but we're also following the case against Sarah Grace Patrick in Georgia. Now, we were expecting her murder trial to begin today, but it has now been continued. The teenager stands accused of fatally shooting her mom and her stepdad. Prosecutors say that Patrick allowed her younger sister to find the bodies before calling 911. Joining me now in the studio is Court TV legal correspondent Kelly Craft. And Kelly, you were all set to go and travel to the case, but it was continued this morning. Tell us about it.
Well, hi there, Michael. Yes, it kind of came as a surprise, but not really, because what we heard some ramblings that this psychological evaluation, that it was not finalized at this point. And so what did the state talk about today as this trial was set to begin? They ended up making a motion to the judge asking for continuance because they only received a preliminary copy of this psychological evaluation of the defendant, in this case 17-year-old Sarah Grace Patrick. Not been finalized yet, that report. So they made this request for a continuance. Let's go ahead and play that for our viewers.
At county call on December 16th, Ms. Williams and the state both indicated that the report regarding the psychological evaluation or the neuropsychological evaluation was not back yet. On December the 31st, we did receive a preliminary draft of the report from Ms. Williams, but as of right now, we still don't have the final copy of that draft. And after just reading the preliminary draft, the state does believe that we need to evaluate that to retain our own expert in that matter. So at this point, because of that, like I said, on December the 16th, how we might need to evaluate that for an expert report, the state is going to be asking for a continuance in this matter.
So you heard the state there requesting that continuance, saying that they want to bring in their own expert to rebut a lot of the findings, again, that are just in the prelim report. They don't even have the final report yet, Michael.
All right, so I guess we're kind of expecting mental health to be a part of this defense.
Defense counsel is the one that requested this evaluation of their client. They had a doctor meet with Sarah Grace Patrick several times. And then again, the prelim report came out December 31st. So we'll still have to see what is part of this when the trial does get underway, Michael. But the judge did say because of this situation, because this report is not finalized yet, he was going to grant that continuance. Now, defense counsel had said that they were ready to proceed. They were ready to go forward today. The judge questioned them about that, saying, you want to go forward even though you don't have the final copy? They said, yes, we want to go forward today. But the judge did not allow that to take place. Let's go ahead and listen to what the judge had to say.
Based on what's been presented for me today, I will place this on, I believe it's August 3rd. We'll place this on August 3rd. And with the understanding that if I'm going to bypass 2 trial weeks in order to get there, I'm bypassing the 2 days that I could set it on, right? But by doing that, I'm giving defense and state all the time that you could possibly need to have this case ready. And August 3rd needs to be our day. We need to come in August 3rd, ready to pick a jury. All right? Where everyone's on the same page.
Yes, sir. So the new trial date for this double homicide trial, August 3rd. You heard the judge there saying that another continuance will not be granted. Michael?
All right, so we're expecting it started in August. Kelly, thank you so much for that. Julie, appreciate it. Happy New Year. Great to see you. All right, folks, we're going to head back to Ohio now, where Frederick Reer is facing sentencing today for the 2017 death of his girlfriend, Amanda. Right now, we're hearing arguments from the state as to why he should get the maximum. Let's go back in for more.
Thank you, Judge.
Where do you drive your car? What happened in the camper? Was Amanda ever back here?
Yeah.
She was?
Yep.
Where at? In the camper?
Yep.
What happened in the camper?
That's what happened in the camper? Yeah, with his hand around his neck would ask what happened in the camper.
Who did that?
Was that after he did that?
That day, could have been my mother, my daughter, my sister, anybody, honey. I'd have been there that day, babe. I wouldn't wait 6 years to listen to somebody. My God, I thought everything was fine. How am I supposed to do anything different?
He then signed, turned to his mother, made made motions with his hand as if he was signing something to his mother, and his mother said, "What Freddie did." So that's the video recorded statement of Paul Reer insinuating or stating that he believed Amanda Dean was strangled and that the defendant strangled her. Your Honor, after the defendant was indicted, he was in the Huron County Jail. He was participating in a phone call with Reed Yoder, his first lawyer. Sergeant Timko, who's in the courtroom, standing behind the defendant, escorted Mr. Reer into the room. Mr. Reer apparently was screaming at his attorney. That could be heard through the room, heard through the door, so it's not privileged. And this is what Sergeant Timko wrote. As I stood in the hallway, he was having a conversation with other corrections officers that were just walking by, just outside the courtroom. Apparently they have a courtroom in the county jail. I would periodically look in the window and see both the attorney and inmate Reer on the TV screen. At one point, I could hear Reer raise his voice, yelling at the lawyers, so I glanced at the window, make sure things were okay. I heard Reer yelling at the attorney, "There is no body because I disposed of it." Zach Goins, Your Honor, was an inmate in the Huron County Jail. Zach Goins wanted to be moved out of the pod with the defendant because the defendant was talking about murdering people and how he dismembered and disposed of bodies. When John Soraya interviewed the inmate, he was informed that the defendant stated, "You guys would be surprised. It's a lot harder to chop up a body than you think it is. Plus, after you let the body sit for a couple of days," he said, "it already starts to decompose. After a couple of months, it looks like chicken bones. Oh, and by the way, bones don't float." The plea. The defendant faces 3 years to 11 years on the involuntary manslaughter, 6 months to 3 years on each tampering with evidence, and up to 1 year for gross abuse of a corpse. Your Honor, there's a precedent where we're dealing with dismembered bodies and tampering with evidence. And I call your attention to State v. Navoa in Mahoning County, where Mr. Navoa dismembered the body of his girlfriend with some assistance, Shannon Graves, burned the body in sulfuric acid, or the head and torso. He pled guilty to tampering with evidence. Judge found it was the worst form of the offense and was given the maximum sentence on the tampering with evidence. State versus Arturo Navoa. State versus Montanez Roldan out of Cuyahoga County, where defendant pled guilty to involuntary manslaughter based on providing the victim with tainted drugs. He received a prison sentence of 10 years on the involuntary manslaughter conviction, 8 for corrupting another with drugs. Judge, you're guided by, as you know, you're guided by 29, 29, 11, 12, 13, 14 with respect to sentencing. 29, 29, 11 sets forth the purposes of felony sentencing. States the sentence for a felony conviction must be commensurate and not demeaning to the seriousness of the offender's conduct, its impact upon the victim, and consistent with sentences imposed for similar crimes committed by others. Your Honor, the state echoes what you heard from the victims today and requests that you sentence the defendant to prison. Thank you.
All right, very good. I will indicate before Mr. Rich begins his presentation, I did receive and review your sentencing memorandum as well.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Address the court.
All right, we'll step aside here, folks. When we come back, we'll have more of the sentencing hearing for Frederick Reer. So keep it here on Court TV.
I'm going to ask you a lot of intensely personal questions.
From the crime scene to the courtroom, this is Victim to Verdict.
Everyone has this heightened sense of anticipation.
What a day here at Court TV.
Fireworks both inside and outside the courthouse.
Let the cameras roll. Today.
Back now to sentencing in Ohio, where a man who admits to killing his girlfriend almost a decade ago is facing sentencing. Frederick Reer pleaded guilty last month ahead of his trial in the 2017 death of his girlfriend, Amanda Dean. Now, the two were in an abusive relationship, and police initially believed that Dean was in a shelter at the time that she went missing. I want to get you back into court now, where the defense is asking for mercy on behalf of the convicted killer.
May it please the court, counsel. Your Honor, I understand that, clearly the court is aware that the purposes of the sentencing guidelines is to take the anger and the emotion out of the courtroom and to be consistent with what is done throughout the state. I appreciate the state conceding that they can't prove this is a cold-blooded murder. There's no evidence of that. I understand that the Dean family and their supporters are going to always believe that in their hearts, and there's nothing I can do about that. But I don't believe there was any evidence of that. That's why we're here. I want to outline some of the highlights in regards to the memorandum. when we look at the offender's conduct being more serious than others in the exact same circumstances. Injury exacerbated by the victim's physical or mental condition. That's not applicable here. The victim suffered serious physical, psychological, or economic harm. I have to concede that. I understand the purposes of felony sentencing is also to protect the public and punish the offender. But I think the court's aware, the state didn't point out, is he would be eligible for community control sanctions, probation, no time. And we're not going to argue that because I think that would jeopardize our credibility with this court. What are the factors? Did the offender hold public office or a position of trust related to the offense? Once again, not applicable. The offender's occupation obliged the offender to prevent the offense or to bring those committing it to justice. Not applicable. The offender's reputation, occupation, or office facilitated the offense or is likely to influence others. It's not applicable. The offender's relationship with the victim facilitated the offense. Have to concede that. That would be the second point on the more serious factors. Offender acted for hire or as a part of organized criminal activity. Clearly not applicable here. The offender was motivated by prejudice based on race, ethnicity, gender, sexual orientation, or religion. No evidence of that. Not applicable here. In a domestic violence or assault case, offender is a parent or a custodian. The victim was a family or household member, and the offense was committed in the vicinity of one or more children. That's not applicable here. So of the 9 more serious factors, 7 are in his way, in his benefit. The offender's conduct is less serious, even though I understand the circumstances here are egregious. The victim induced and or facilitated the offense. Clearly, that's not applicable. A man that did nothing to deserve what happened. The offender acted under strong provocation. Not applicable. No evidence of that whatsoever. The offender did not cause or expect to cause physical harm or person or property. I think that's applicable here. The state has suggested in their arguments that it's potentially accidental, whether it's through sexual activity or drug usage. Again, that's not murder. Yeah. When we look at the recidivism factors, offense was committed while on bail, awaiting sentencing on felony community control, meaning probation, or post-release control, meaning parole, or after post-release control was unfavorably terminated, as the court's aware in its rules in several other cases. It's not applicable here. Recidivism, more likely factor. The offender has a history of criminal convictions or juvenile delinquency. He doesn't. Which brings us to a second point. Forget community control sanctions. If the court was to sentence him to prison, the law would presume on the first prison term there would be a minimum sentence, which is 3 years. Again, I'm not going to advocate for that because it's a credibility issue based upon the terrible facts and circumstances here. Third, recidivism, more likely. Offender has not responded favorably to sanctions previously imposed in an adult court or juvenile court. No priors, as the discovery says. No prior criminal activity. Recidivism concern. I have to acknowledge that this is an issue potentially. Offender shows pattern of alcohol or drug use related to the offense and doesn't acknowledge it or refuses treatment. It's my understanding that Fred was clean for a long period of time and they started using again at this particular time period. And when we talk about genuine remorse, I heard the sons and I heard the family speak, and they weren't at the proffer. He broke down at the proffer, and I'll get to the proffer shortly again. When we look at recidivism, less likely. Offender has no prior juvenile delinquency or adjudication, no prior adult conviction. Once again, another factor in Fred's favor. He has led a law-abiding life for a significant number of years. No convictions. Offense was committed under circumstances unlikely to reoccur. I guess, God, we all hope so, correct? And then showing genuine remorse. Again, as the court's aware, can't be having the client send letters of remorse while charges are pending. We can't do that. Fred, the reason that we're here is because Fred authorized me to reach out to the state and tell them what happened. We went to the property. Counsel can't do that on their own. It was with the defendant's cooperation. We went through the snow and sleet so he could show them what happened. We went down down the road to show him where the body was disposed of. Again, can't do that without the client's consent. So it's imperative to know that he attempted to do the right thing, even though I understand, that the family feels differently. So besides the factors completely weighing in his favor, there would be a presumption of a minimum sentence. Your Honor, I knew that the family was going to be asking for a maximum sentence, and the state was. I'm not going to sit here and argue for probation or a minimum sentence. I think the appropriate sentence in this case would be 5 years on the involuntary manslaughter and a year consecutive each on the 2 felonies, so the 3rd degree, and 1 year on the F5. One of the things that's important too is during their argument, they talked about a lot of other things that Fred has done. Well, he wasn't charged for any of that stuff. Those acts are not before the court today for sentencing. They don't go to the analysis of what he should be punished for. He acknowledged what he did. He accepted responsibility for the crimes that he pled guilty to. Those are the crimes that he committed. I understand the frustration that the family went through initially because things weren't happening with the case. And then once we reached out to law enforcement, again, Fred can't control the forensics team. They did, I believe, because they kept advising us the steps they were taking to try to get that done. It was complicated due to weather and other issues. That was not Fred's doing. I think what's important in that, too, is no time did he say he wants to withdraw his right to a speedy trial. And no time did he say, hey, Judge Conway, I want to be out on bond because they told me they were going to get this done and it couldn't get done. He cooperated. I respectfully submit it's terrible policy that somebody would be asking for a maximum plea, a maximum sentence on a plea. That flies in the face of trying to resolve matters in a just manner. And again, it should be perfectly clear he would be either eligible for probation or a minimum prison sentence. In this case was 3 years. I submit that the 8 years is a fair and just sentence under the circumstances. He did not plead to any of the talk that was rendered to law enforcement by Gerald Hunter. The first phone call from Gerald Hunter was bashing his public defense attorney from across the street, and he wanted to help himself out. All these other acts and these inmates, there's no evidence of that. It wouldn't even have been admissible if we had a trial of this matter. So I would submit to you that a fair and just sentence is 8 years with credit for time served. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Does the defendant wish to address the court?
All right, I want to bring in our guest for this hour. Joining us, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Jack Rice. Jack, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today on the program. And I'd love to get your thoughts on what we just heard from the defense attorney. He made some interesting arguments, not the least of which was that under normal circumstances, with these particular charges, this defendant might be eligible for probation and really a maximum or a minimum of 3 years based on the charges that he pleaded to. But he did sort of give over to the fact that this was a heinous crime and that perhaps 8 years might be the right amount for this defendant. Love to get your thoughts.
Oh, Michael, it's first of all great to be with you. When we think about this, I think about this in the first place, how I'm negotiating. I'm thinking about how I would negotiate something like this. And that's really important. And the reason it matters so much is because this is a particularly heinous crime, which means sometimes what you're trying to do is you're trying to limit the exposure. Hence, they were coming off the murder down to the manslaughter. And so you're looking, generally speaking, at a maximum of that 3 to 11 years, right? But sometimes if you're trying to get less than that 11, what you're also trying to do is you're trying to get what's called a cap on time. You're trying to limit how much he can get, because the fear is that a judge may never go less than the maximum because it's so horrible. And remember, we're not even talking about whether you're going to go to the maximum plus consecutive sentencing, which the defense attorney talked about. So in other words, sometimes you could run this parallel to each other, concurrent sentencing, But when you go consecutive, it's back to back to back to back. So you can run this one, and then this one, and then this one, and then this one. And so you're always thinking about how you fight this fight on the front end.
Now, the approach by the prosecution was to essentially argue to the judge that, hey, judge, look, we got all this evidence that suggests he killed this woman. And as I'm listening to that evidence as they sketched it out, it sounded like a really good case for murder. We talked about Brian Walsh being sort of a comparable, and what he was convicted of there, that first-degree murder, and what happened after the death of Anna being sort of the idea that fueled this sense that there was a premeditation here. You got similar things here. Are you surprised that the prosecution went this route?
No, I'm not. And you know why? Because if you want this judge to hate him, this is how you do it. This is how you emotionally, viscerally, I think, drive this judge to cap this out, to give him the worst possible sentence. I mean, if we think about what the prosecutors are doing, is they're saying he was a murderer. This wasn't a manslaughter. This was a murder. From a defense attorney perspective, my response is, fine, then prove it. When you accepted this plea, when you accepted this agreement, you've lost the right to argue this from a defense attorney perspective. But from a strategic perspective, where you put this before a judge, what you're saying is this is a horrific human being who murdered this person in the most brutal way possible, and then subsequently to murdering her, cut her to pieces. And he did it purposely and intentionally and everything that went with that. What that does is drive judges, because these are human beings too, I joke, but it's true, that it's going to drive them to sentence in the most effective and extensive way that they possibly can.
Quickly, I just want to respond to that by saying, couldn't the judge have the same response that the defense would have and say to prosecutors, well, you know, you're arguing to me that he did this way. Why not go into court and prove it beyond a reasonable doubt? Now you're going to ask me to sentence him like you've proven it.
Yeah, boy, I love it. I love being on with you for that reason, because that is exactly what I was thinking that the judge should do. They should say, if this is what you believe, district attorney, if this is how you're going to handle this case, then don't come to me with this plea and say you're not objecting to it, because you don't get to talk out of both sides of your mouth. But instead, the judge sat there and let them argue. And, you know, sometimes I do understand that. Imagine being in this room. It's not just the prosecutor on one side and the defense on the other. It's that entire extensive family. And that's the brutality of this.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And again, prosecutors have every right to make that argument. Again, it's just a question of how the judge might take that in and use it in his ultimate decision. All right, stand by. We're going to take a break here, folks. Coming up, Frederick Reer actually is going to speak to the court and give his final statement ahead of his sentencing. Plus, the trial for a former Uvalde police officer accused of failing to respond to that school shooting that left 19 students and 2 teachers dead gets underway. Court TV Crime and Justice correspondent Matt Johnson joins us next with all the latest. Keep it here on Court TV. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. Let's turn now to Texas, where jury selection is underway for the trial of a former police officer involved in the response to the deadly school shooting in Uvalde. Defendant Adrian Gonzalez was one of the first officers to respond to the 2022 school shooting, but prosecutors say he failed to take action to protect the students. Court TV Crime and Justice correspondent Matt Johnson joins us now in the studio. All right, Matt, you're going to be covering this for us. What can we expect during the trial?
Well, one of the biggest and most anticipated trials of the new year. Nice to see you, Michael. Right now, jury selection still underway in that Texas courtroom for the former police officer, Adrian Gonzalez. Prosecutors say that the former school resource officer was one of the first people on the scene, but chose not to confront the active school shooter for several minutes. This happened back in 2022 at Robb Elementary School in Uvalde, Texas. It took more than an hour before police moved in and neutralized the shooter, meaning that he was killed by police fire. 19 students and 2 teachers died in that school shooting, and one of the biggest pieces of evidence, you're looking at it right there, is the body camera video. It's very tough to watch.
Shots fired in the building. I heard somebody say someone was shot in the head. Which building? I don't know. They haven't said anything. going in or we staying here? What are we doing?
Let's set up perimeter, bro.
He's in the class. Dude, I got shots fired. What? We're gonna be in the building, the west side. Dude, we gotta get in there. DPS is sitting there, people. We gotta get in there and just keep shooting.
One of the biggest pieces of evidence right there that this jury is going to see once they're seated. Now, we should also note that this was a change of venue. The trial was moved to Corpus Christi after the defense had argued, Michael, that they couldn't get a fair trial there in the very small, tight-knit community of Uvalde.
All right, makes sense. All right, and what are the charges and possible sentences that this defendant is facing?
There's a lot of criminal charges here. There's a lot of victims in this case. There's dozens of charges. There were 19 children that were killed, along with 2 teachers that were murdered. 17 survivors were also injured in all of this. They could testify. The former officer was charged with 29 counts of child endangerment. He faces up to 58 years in prison if convicted. Now, also we should note, the former Uvalde Schools police chief was also charged in this case. In general, trial date has not been set for him. Opening statements are expected in this case for Mr. Gonzalez there as early as tomorrow morning. But again, we have a crew there on the ground, boots on the ground in Texas. We are waiting for word. As soon as they seat that jury, we'll let our viewers know.
All right, looking forward to all your updates on this trial. Matt, great to see you. Happy New Year to you as well. All right, folks, I want to take you now back to Ohio for the sentencing of Frederick Reer. Reer pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter in the death of his girlfriend, Amanda Dean. Let's go back inside that courtroom where the defendant is about to give his final statement to the court ahead of sentencing.
Well, no, sir, I would just like to say I'm sorry to the Dean family, sorry to my family, I'm sorry to the community. And thank you, Your Honor, Judge. Appreciate your time.
All right, very good. Thank you. The court then has considered the overriding purposes of sentencing contained in the revised code section 292911A. The court's cognizant of those purposes, including the protection of the public from future crimes by the defendant, the protection of the public from future crimes by others, and the punishment of the defendant using the minimum sanctions the court determines to accomplish those purposes without imposing an unnecessary burden on state or local government resources. In attempting to achieve those overriding purposes, the court has considered rehabilitation of the defendant, providing restitution to the victim and the public, the need to incapacitate the defendant, and the deterrence of the defendant and others. In looking at the principles of sentencing in revised code section 292911B and C, and in passing this sentence, the court has tried to achieve those purposes by making this sentence reflect the seriousness of the defendant's conduct, its impact on the victim and the victim's family, also to be consistent with sentences for similar crimes and similar defendants, and the court will not base this sentence on race, ethnicity, gender, or religion. Here, the court, in looking at the factors to consider in felony sentencing, would first note, after reviewing the victim impact statements, certainly many of them asked for a sentence that would be appropriate in a murder case. Here, the defendant has pled to a charge. It's not a murder offense, and the court is bound to go by the rules to be followed in sentencing under the charge for each of the charges that he has pled to. In considering those charges here, the court would note, as far as the case being more serious, obviously the level of harm that was suffered by Amanda Dean was the most significant type, that being death. Certainly the impact on her family, her friends, and the community was substantial, as was demonstrated by everyone's appearance here today in these matters. The relationship of the defendant with the victim certainly was a factor in the offense here. In addition, the moving and desecration of Amanda's body, the concealing of the crime for many years does show a significant lack of remorse and also imposed on the family a very untenable situation where they did not know what had happened to their relative, their daughter, their sister, their cousin, their friend, and had to suffer through that experience for many years prior to the court coming, prior to the case coming before the court. As far as it being less serious, the court doesn't find that there are any factors that would be applicable. As far as recidivism being more likely, the court would note that the defendant did not have a significant history. There were apparently some minor misdemeanors that were in the background, but nothing that would indicate that this type of level of offense would be in the offing. As far as remorse, that's the more difficult issue here. The defendant, as the state indicated, did.
All right, you might have missed it. The defendant spoke very briefly, but did apologize to friends and family of the victim, and the judge there going through his reasoning for his ultimate sentence. We'll take a break here, and we'll have more of his reasoning when he ultimately delivers the sentence for Frederick Dean. So keep it here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
Tonight on Closing Arguments, the latest in the biggest cases from across the country. We're live bringing you expert insight into all of today's new developments.
Closing Arguments, tonight at 8/7 Central, only on Court TV.
The school shooting that broke hearts around the country and broke trust with law enforcement.
Now, the officer sworn to protect those students faces a jury.
The Uvalde school massacre trial. Live coverage this week on Court TV.
Let's head back to sentencing now in the disappearance of Amanda Dean case in Ohio. Defendant Frederick Reer he pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter in the death of his girlfriend Amanda Dean. The 36-year-old mother of 4 disappeared in 2017. Her body has never been found. I want to take you back inside that courtroom now. The judge is about to hand down his sentence.
However, that cooperation was only after the state had turned the matter over to PCI and discovery was provided to the defendant. The defendant did himself and secretive, did go about in the worst possible fashion disposing of the body and destroying the evidence. And for that purpose, put the family in a terrible situation for that number of years, which to the court indicates a serious lack of remorse as to those factors. As far as recidivism being less likely, no serious past history of criminal activity. The defendant, again, would note there was cooperation at some point with the authorities once the case had proceeded in this fashion. Based on those factors, the court would impose the following sentence. As to count 1, tampering with evidence, a felony of the 3rd degree, the court is going to impose a 2-year prison sentence. On count 2, gross abuse of a corpse, a felony of the 5th degree, a 1-year prison sentence. The court finds there that the maximum sentence would be appropriate based on the facts and circumstances of this court, or in this case, and the dismembering and the burning of the body, and then disposing of it in such a fashion that unfortunately the family was left without any remains to deal with for their daughter. On amended count 5, involuntary manslaughter, a felony of the 1st degree, the court's going to impose a 9-year prison sentence. The court feels the higher end of that sentence is appropriate based on the sentencing factors that we've reviewed here, based on the fact that we do not know the actual cause of death in this matter. I think it would be inappropriate to impose the maximum sentence. I don't think the court has the factors in front of it to do so. As far as count 6, tampering with evidence, a felony of the 3rd degree, the court is going to impose a 2-year prison sentence there as well. The court is going to run those sentences consecutively to each other. The total sentence to be served then would be a total of 15 years. I am going to require that the defendant pay the cost of the proceedings in this matter. And as far as the consecutive nature of the sentence, the court would find here consecutive sentences are necessary to protect the public from future crimes and to adequately punish the offender. They're not disproportionate to the seriousness of his conduct, nor the danger that he poses to the public. And here, at least 2 of the offenses were committed as part of 1 or more courses of conduct, and the harm caused by those courses of conduct was so great that no single prison sentence for any of those offenses committed would be adequate to reflect the seriousness of the offender's conduct. The offender also has demonstrated through this case that the history here would indicate that the consecutive sentences would be necessary to protect the public from future crimes by the defendant as well. In looking at the potential for a reduction of a sentence here, the court will indicate that the risk reduction sentencing and IPP programs would not be available based on the level of offense. Potentially, there would be a reduction available through transitional control if the sentence exceeds 1 year, and that decision would be left up to the Department of Corrections if the defendant were to qualify. As far as earned time credit, The court is aware that we are sentencing based on the prior law at the time of these offenses. So earned time credit would be at the former level, which would be that as to each of the charges here in the sentences imposed, they could be reduced by up to 8% if the defendant followed the rules and regulations of the Department of Corrections while he was there, and could be potentially increased to up to 10% if he completed certain programming. But the Department of Corrections would reserve the right to reimpose that time if he violated those rules. Do you understand that, Mr. Reer?
Yes, sir.
There is post-release control in this case as well, because it was a felony of the first degree. Upon release from prison, the defendant would be placed on supervision by the parole board. That would be for a period of 2 to 5 years. And if you violate those terms and conditions, at that time you could be returned to prison for up to 9 months for each violation, up to a total of 50% of your originally stated prison sentence. In addition, if you were to commit a new felony while on post-release control, at that time you could be returned to prison for the remainder of the post-release control time, or for 12 months, whichever of those is longer, in addition to any time that would be imposed on the new felon. Do you understand that?
Yes, sir.
As far as judicial release, you do have the ability to ask the court to release you early because your stated sentence is in excess of 10 years. You would have to wait until you serve 1/2 of that sentence before you could apply for an early release. Do you understand that?
Yes, Your Honor.
As far as rights of appeal, there's no automatic right of appeal here. You may have some limited rights of appeal that could apply. Any appeal that you would wish to file, you have to do so by filing a notice with a clerk of court's office within 30 days from the date of the judgment entry that imposed the sentence. Do you understand that?
Yes.
You do have 696 days of credit, which is an unusually large amount. Again, the court expresses to the family thanks for your patience in allowing the process to play out to see whether the remains of Amanda could be recovered. That did entail this case taking substantially longer than a typical case would take. As far as the purposes today, I'm going to remand you the custody of the sheriff and have you begin serving out the prison sentence that was handed down. Is there anything further than from how you would part?
Yes, may we approach it?
You may. That's all right. All right. Again, my apologies. The math was incorrect. It was a total of 14 years to be applied. And again, that would still be half of the time that the defendant could then apply for judicial release. So my math was incorrect there. That's 14 years. That was the total sentence. Anything further than the court?
No. I just asked the defendant's indigent. I asked that the court waive any fines and costs.
Is there any objection?
No.
All right. The court will waive fines and costs based on the anticipated length of the incarceration.
I will request a contact visit with his mother, Your Honor.
At the county jail?
Either here under the supervision of the sheriff or at the jail, Your Honor.
All right. Well, as far as the jail here locally, I leave that determination up to the sheriff. As long as he remains here prior to his transport to the institution. As far as the institution, I would leave it up to their discretion.
Yes, sir.
All right. Anything further than from the party?
No, Your Honor.
All right, very good. Thank you. Again, I appreciate the family's patience in this matter. I hope this helps you heal and move forward. To keep Amanda's memory with you as you proceed on. I appreciate it. Thank you.
All right, so that defendant there being, led away after receiving what I would have to term a gift. 14 years, and based on the situation here, he's been in jail over 900 days. I'm going to round it out to about 3 years. He can ask to be released on early release after having served half the time, so 7 years. So within 4 years, he could potentially be released. So again, under the circumstances, you got to feel that's a gift. Let's bring in our guest. Still with us, criminal defense attorney and former prosecutor Jack Rice. Jack, I've termed it a bit of a gift based on the facts of this case. The sentencing was where it needed to be. The judge felt he couldn't sentence on the maximum for involuntary manslaughter because they don't know the cause of death. I'm struggling with that as well, but love to get your thoughts.
First of all, I would say the gift came with the negotiated plea.
Yeah.
Because what that really did was cap this out. And in fact, the worst he probably could have done, if I count this right, was probably 18 years. So the fact that he got 14 was actually on the high end of this. I'm not so sure I would have been as thrilled as I could have been if I were sitting in that space. But the negotiation, sometimes this really highlights the point, though, doesn't it, Michael, that sometimes it's the negotiation that happens before this is over that really makes all the difference in the world. And I really do want to tip my hat to the defense attorney in this case, who was a public defender. You heard him reference in the fact the waiver of any fees in that case. And really, they are in many ways the unsung heroes, not because this man deserved anything per se, but I would argue that anybody who's been charged with a crime, anybody who was ultimately found guilty of a crime, still has the right to have representation. And this is a fundamental core value of the United States. And sometimes that's hard to reconcile when you hear this sort of thing and say, he deserves nothing from us. And yet, I have an enormous amount of admiration to those public defenders who serve this country every day. I truly do. And I'm not dismissing what the prosecutors are doing. That's equally critically important.
Yeah, I appreciate that because they certainly don't get the kudos they deserve. As a matter of fact, they can get vilified at times for folks. All right, final thoughts on this one. Again, my point going towards the recidivism aspect. I'm worried about that because this to me is nothing more than a domestic violence case. About 20 seconds.
No, well, you know, when you think about this as a domestic violence case, I think we should focus in on that when you realize the number of cases that start as domestics that turn into homicides. That is the connection that I think is brutally important to remember for all of us.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, Jack Rice, thank you so much, as always, for being with us on the program.